The question in my mind is, how do you create or relaunch a highly profitable and successful 6 to 7 figure business? With so much conflicting advice about the best ways to start and grow your business, how do you get it right the first time? I want to help entrepreneurs make a real difference and navigate the messy world of startup or relaunch. My name is John North, and this is the Startup Secrets for Entrepreneur Show. Join me today when we dig deep with our guests and get you the best blueprint so you can fast track your own business. This episode is sponsored by Evolvepreneur.app, your all-in-one online business system. Make sure you subscribe for future episodes at startupsecrets.show right now. So let's get into today's episode.
My name is Gilles Bertaux. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Livestorm, and I've been on the Startup Secret Show, and you should listen to it because we're going to talk about growth going from a product, a final exam project to an actual product with 130 people behind, and a growth from 1,000 customers to 5,000 customers in 1 year.
So my very special guest today, and I'm going to mess his name up to start with, so I'm just going to have a go at it, is Gilles Bertaux. There you go. See, I stuffed it up.
Close enough. I've seen worse.
I reckon I've got close. So tell me how you actually pronounce your name so we get this right.
All right. I'm going to go all French and pronounce it right way. So it's Gilles Bertaux.
Gilles Bertaux.
So you see, it was close enough. Yeah. It's good. Good,
right?
Yeah.
So, interesting thing. I was looking at your software today, and I actually signed up for a free trial and everything. So I sort of had a little play around with what you do. So basically, you have an online, webinar platform or meetings platform, and it looked pretty cool. So I had a bit of a look around. So,
thank you.
Is this kind of like your first venture into the world of SaaS in terms of providing online software, or where did you come from to get to here?
I come from school, man. I mean, this is my first company.
Right.
Actually, the stuff that you saw on the website is the result of a final exam project from school.
Wow.
So everything started back
you must have passed the exam, did you?
Yeah, I mean, I got a good grade, so at least I got that from that venture, a good grade in school. But no, yeah, it was. I made actually 3 co-founders. I met them in school back in college. So that was that was 5 years ago now, and we had to do this. Product, it's a web school essentially. You don't know how to do marketing, design, dev, and whatnot, and you have to produce an actual product, get some actual users, write a business plan, just like it was as if you were going to launch the whole thing. Yeah. And turns out, I mean, I can go on the story, but essentially when we present the results, we use on product, stream on presentation like we're doing now, and we have 100 people coming, connecting and watching us. And then the rest of the teams presenting say, oh, why don't you stream us too? Because we want people to see from the outside what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And out of a sudden, we spend 8-10 hours actually streaming with hundreds of people connecting with something that we built in a month. Wow. And we're like, wow, okay. So perhaps we made something people like. Okay, we're going to go from student to unemployed. That's pretty much the same lifestyle. Let's try it out. Let's see how that goes. And that was the start of everything.
Wow. And so it's interesting that you're sort of in some respects it was accidental, but then by setting up the planning and the process, it actually, almost became a true reality. That's pretty crazy. I know my son did a little similar kind of project when he was in grade 12, I think, where he basically had to come up with a business idea and stuff like that, and he wanted to do translation services in Japanese, stuff like that. And he's still mad keen on it. He still does it in his part-time. I said, I think you'll never make any money out of it. It sounds like a hard job, but he had to write a whole business plan around it. So it's good to see that, that's a real world sort of experiment at the end of the day that taught you something. So when you left, then you basically had something to start with. That's quite amazing.
And I think when you think about it, is probably the most interesting time because, as I said, you don't have anything to lose, right? You mentioned you continues working on this project, and we went with that mindset. We're going to keep working on this project, see how that goes. And worst case scenario is if that doesn't take off, or it doesn't work out, we actually worked on something that is actually valuable. We don't have anything to lose. We didn't have a family. We didn't have anything to support. So it was fairly easy, and we were in a really lucky position to do it. So timing matters, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess in the current pandemic, it also gives, you probably get more visiting your site than ever, because I know like the likes of Zoom and those sort of guys, they really had to pump up their resources in terms of managing that whole growth.
Yeah. Speaking of timing, that was another one. No, well, I mean, this whole ride has been like a succession of, I was going to say good events for us, but let's not talk about the pandemic as a nice event. Let's just say that we were on a good side of the road here. And it's just like the succession of lucky happening for us. And 2020 was just insane. We, to give you the context, we raised in early January of 2020, we have raised a Series A 6 months ago, and we have 1,000-ish customers, something around that. And we go into March, first lockdown. We don't know the lockdown is coming up. We don't know there is an actual pandemic going on. And March is always a good month. It's we always like this really good numbers to show off in March. But the thing is, whenever I refresh the dashboard, I see numbers go up, and I'm like, what? Is this a bug? Or what is happening?
Something's going wrong.
Something is going wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so we're getting some good traction, and then I'm like, no, this is not good traction. This is a freaking wall we're hitting, and from mid-March up until I don't know, well, end of May, we go from 1,000-ish customers to 3,000 customers, something around that. So we tripled customer base and revenue in less than 3 months. And it's nice, it's so cool, and it's insane, but it's came with a lot of shitty problems on top of that.
Growth, success problems, right? It doesn't mean success or failure. It still got lots of problems.
Absolutely. In French, we say this is rich people problems, and it is exactly that. The architecture. You have this good architecture because the product's not built to absorb like 2,500 or 3,000 customers in 2 months. That's just not going to happen. So you have to scale the architecture. Then you have a small customer support team that handles like 2,000 conversations. There are 4 of them. And all of a sudden they have 20,000 conversations. And then, like their house starts getting into fire, and then you have to.
And then so that's customers that don't get support, so end up in a worse situation, because then, they'll badmouth you or whatever. And
absolutely. Absolutely. And then you have to think, and hiring is not an option, because when you want to hire, that person is going to come through the door maybe in 2 months, and it's going to be too late. So you have to find ways to do with whatever you have now. So that was a wild ride. The first 3 months of lockdown was a wild ride. But at the end of the day, for 2020, we went from 1,000 to almost 5,000 now. So it was a 450% growth in 1 year. So it was a decent year for me.
Great. So you raised capital for this, and I think I've noticed on your website you did some capital raisings.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, after the first lockdown, we decided we need to hire, because we were, we didn't have the resources to handle that kind of thing. So we need to hire. We needed management, because one thing we realized is that as a founder, we were still managing a lot of things. And we needed actual people to help us delegate that management burden in a way. So we hired middle management, we hired people. So at the end of the day, we went from 30 people beginning of January to 86 at the end of the year. And in order to support that, plus to support also the momentum, because we wanted to keep this trend, this tailwind going on, we need to raise capital. So during summer, we did some research. We had a lot of inbound, so we met a lot of people, obviously. And but the good thing is, at the end of the day, our investors, they knew the product, they knew the ambition, they knew the buy-in, the vision. So they just like put a bunch of money on the table, say, you know what, don't think about it, just take the money and move on. And again, super timing, super lucky in our ride. So I'm really grateful. And we raised a $30 million round.
Wow. And so are you giving up a fair chunk of the company for that, or is that is that something that is a reasonable sort of, you can sleep at night and think that you gave enough away that it matters?
Yeah, no, you know what? I think given the tailwind, given the context, I think we were also in a good position for negotiation. We were in a good position for all sort of things. So honestly, it was like really market practice in terms of how it was normal round dilution. So nothing really fancy here. Right. I'm not really able to talk about the number of dilution because obviously I cannot disclose that kind of thing. But from a market perspective, it was really, really standard.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I mean that's the end of the day. So it's always a trade-off when someone comes along and says, "I can't give you money." There's always strings attached, right? So
I mean that's the word of capital, They just they give you a bunch of money, they give you resources, network, and everything else. So they want to be part of the ride, and to be part of the ride, you have to give up a fair chunk of equity, obviously. But that's the VC world. That's how VC-backed company works, and this is why they can actually go so fast. But there is indeed a price to pay. But yeah,
you're willing to pay the price. So, in terms of your software, how does it differentiate in the marketplace? What do you use as your differences, say, between Zoom or Webinar Jam or whatever it's called next week? What differentiate yourself, because I think you've changed their names.
I think you actually kind of responded to your own question by saying like there is a single, there is like every single week you have a new video product popping up every week, right? And the fact is that video is becoming kind of a commodity. I mean, you have a lot of video products are integrating video into their own software, and building video is getting cheaper, even free, because you have open source frameworks. So video is not so much the focus and should not be the focus. And for us, it's not really the focus. And the way we sell at Livestorm is say, what's important for us is everything that is around video. So the first layer is interaction. How do you make sure you're going to engage your audience in the most fun way, or the most like interactive way? So chat, polls, questions, but also how do you go beyond webcam and screen sharing? So have a Google Doc integration, Miro, Figma if you're a designer, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So interaction. Yeah. The second layer that we want to work on is how do we make your life easier into organizing an event, whatever that is, and whoever you are. So if you're going to work in accounting or marketing, we're going to provide the same tools. So you have everything built in, everything out of the shelf, from promotion, landing pages, up to analytics and retargeting options. And everything is automated. You don't have to ask marketing or IT for something. You just have everything built in. And the third layer that we want to work on is integrating really deeply with your tools. Because if you work in HR or if you work in marketing, you're going to use different set of tools. And we want to be working with both population. We want to integrate with their own way of working. And so we want to provide as many integrations as possible and build the biggest ecosystem of connectors. So you see that what I'm describing here is everything but video, because our focus is not video, is how do we build a platform that makes sense of video. And that's how we sell Livestorm. We're not here to replace Zoom. We sell something that is more in capacity to address those kind of events where you need control, landing pages, organization, integrations, and so on and so forth.
Control your destiny and create a complete business system for your online business. Evolvepreneur.app offers an easy and cost-effective way to build your online business by helping you avoid the pain and stress of implementing multiple systems, giving you the freedom to automate and scale. Support our sponsor by grabbing a free copy of Startup Secrets for Entrepreneurs at Evolvepreneur.app. Yeah, so probably a slightly, I guess you could say, a more sophisticated customer, but then in some respects what you've done is you've made it simple so they don't have to be sophisticated as such. It's almost like they got maybe a little bit more complexity in features, but you're not making it complex.
Absolutely, and we want to make something that's super easy to use. Typically, one big differentiator is in Zoom, if you want to host an event, let's say with like a traditional webinar event, it takes organization. You have to build landing pages. You have to ask marketing for assets. You can do blah, blah, blah. So Zoom is typically a video pipe. It is great for collaboration or daily calls or one-on-one calls like we're doing now. But as soon as you require more organization, then you have to stitch it all together to make it work properly. And that takes like an hour, 2 hours, even a day, perhaps, if you have multiple stakeholders. With Livestorm, and this is an actual data, it takes less than 8 minutes to set up an event from A to Z that has all the features built in.
Nice.
And that's what we sell, simplicity, UX, and a platform that has everything out of the shelf.
And I had a quick look today, and it's like it's pretty good. Like you've got a lot of the the processes built out, so that like the registration page looked pretty cool, and it was nice and simple to use. So I think that's the that's the trick nowadays, because people have got more sophisticated what they need.
Absolutely,
over time, I think, and
Well, one thing that I always say is when you go to Instagram, and you want to host a live stream on Instagram, you don't ask yourself, is Instagram going to, be able to? How do I put it? I don't focus on what Instagram Live provides in terms of capacity. I just focus on the content that I want to produce, and I ask myself, okay, what type of content I'm going to stream. And on the B2B side, it is exactly the opposite. You just always think, okay, what the tools can provide in terms of features, and then what kind of content can I build on top of that? And that's I think just wrong, because what I want to do is, and we saw that with the pandemic, I want people to focus on diversifying the use cases. I want them to focus on creating the content I want to create. If this is a video podcast, or if this is like a fireside chat or a webinar or demo or whatnot, they should not be focusing on the features provided by the tools. The tools should adapt to their way of working. And this is why we want to provide something that is extremely flexible, from an event with 10 people up to something with 3,000 people, and, have multiple guests and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think simplifying and enabling people to create the content they want to create without, having too much IT paradigm is something we're doing.
Yeah. And I guess there's a groundswell of people now having to go to video that weren't going to video before, so they're really newbies in the game, and they probably would struggle with a lot of these things in terms of creating events and that sort of stuff anyway. So it's certainly I guess it's almost a blueprint or a framework for them to follow too. You kind of set in the scene.
Absolutely, you're 100% right. When I think that I have like some really cool example. When the lockdown happened, the first one. Well, there were tons of businesses. Those guys, they didn't have the choice. As I said in French, they were like in front of the wall. They have to move forward, so they have to find a way to make it work. So typically, when you work with insurances and big banks and whatever, those guys they're not used to have they're not tech savvy. They're not used to have remote communication tools like we had. So they had to make the move. They made it. They went with Livestorm or else or whatnot, whatever, and they actually now our biggest users in terms of diversity of use cases. For some reason, the constraint of having to move forward with Livestorm and actually find a way to keep the business going, they kind of force themselves to find new use cases and ways to produce content. And since they have a huge audience, both internally and externally, they made something they had internal video podcasting, external podcasting. They did some PR conferences with journalists using Livestorm, and internal trainings. We even saw ones doing recruiting sessions because they had to keep hiring from a remote standpoint, and it was really amazing to see all those different use cases from a company or industry that was definitely not in the mold of tech savvy companies using remote communications now. Yeah. So, and I think that's kind of the beauty to see this kind of accelerated digital transformation, and yeah.
Considering, it's probably launched this 10 years into the future in some cases. Some of these businesses have gone from, they've said, oh, no, my employees can't work from home. It's not possible, to, oh, you do have to work from home now. Oh, that's not too bad. It works pretty good now. Maybe we don't need them to come back to work, right? So,
you know what? I actually heard that from one of the I was going to say like VPs. I don't know if it was like a VP, but it's say like executives from those typical banks and startups. I'm like, yeah, you know what, John's, we're going to add more licenses because turns out, this remote work is actually working for us. Said the company that for 20 or 30 or 40 years, we're like, no, you're not going to work from home. This is not working. And and all of a sudden, you know what, this is, so I think that this kind of psychological barrier that kind of, exploded somehow.
I mean, in Sydney now, we're in a lockdown, and the local government said that if you force an employee to go to work now during the lockdown, you'll be fined $10,000.
Wow.
Right.
Oh, you guys don't mess around.
No. Australians like their fines, by the way, but it's kind of crazy. Like, it's almost saying, if you make someone go to work that couldn't work from home, then we're going to fine you $10,000. Like, that's a lot of money to get fined for, asking someone to come to work, right?
Okay, I'm going to keep working in my underwear. That's fine.
Exactly, right. So it's certainly, if the government starts finding you for having employees at work, then that's kind of a bit of a worry, right?
Wow, okay. Oh, I wish we did that.
Well, maybe you should encourage it. Like, this should increase business. It's good business, guys. So, like, you can make some money out of fines of the way. Maybe take a cap on the fines, right? So you mentioned the fines.
Absolutely.
So, in terms of growth, right, you would have gone through the phase of that small employee count. What's your employee count look like now? Like,
you had 100% plus. No, actually not 100%, 100 plus. So we went from 30 to 130 now.
Right.
So it was again pretty fast growth in terms of headcount as well. I think one of the first goal was to really structure and delegate the foundation, operational organization. So typically finance and legal and people management, HR and whatnot. So we need to delegate all that, have a proper foundation. I was kind of into it back in the days and managing all that, and I had someone helping me, but I had to focus on the moment, which was scaling the company. So I had to delegate that. So basically all operations needed to be delegated. So we hired all the legal people and finance team out of the spot. So that was like a 20-ish people team. Mm-hmm. So that was that. And then focusing on go-to-market. So the second thing was focusing on go-to-market and specifically on the sales team. Sales team was really young. I mean, for the past 5 years, we had two funnels. We had one self-service. So typically it means that people pay by credit card and, they're on a monthly basis, et cetera, et cetera. And then we had a small team that we created in, mid 2019. And we had more sales leads coming down the funnel. So we need to take care of that. But in 2020, obviously that funnel of sales lead kind of exploded. So we need more people to handle those bigger leads. So we had to scale this part and also focus on the different regions now. So out of a sudden, the sales team was 5 people-ish, beginning of last year. And now there are like 30, there should be 50 by the end of the year. So there was like the fastest growth in terms of headcount was on the sales team. And obviously on the product team, one thing that is also interesting is that all those operational stuff going on, architecture management, monitoring, QA, testing, et cetera, was pretty much handled by my CTO. But again, you need to focus on reliability, on the roadmap, on the stuff that, that was actually where it has most value of his time. So he actually created a team with DevOps, security and so on. So to really delegate that to actually people that knew what they were doing and much better than him. And then you just like, you put your bag, you just look in the mirror and out of a sudden you're 100 people plus. And because you hire all those teams and you finally delegated, you're in a good spot. You can really focus on the stuff that where things matter. And then you look back and there's like 130 people behind. It's like, wow, okay, that was fast. And and yeah.
Yeah. And usually what happens in most organizations is like they go from like 20 employees. They reckon like 21 is a number that seems to change, and they reckon also 100. So there was a trigger point between the 100 and when you went above that. Because it seems like at certain levels of staff because you can only manage so many people, I think,
No, absolutely. One thing that I was really picky about, and I'm still picky about, is I want to really keep this ratio of whenever you have one manager, you have to have maximum of 5 people in your team. Above 5 people, above 5 direct reports, you usually spend too much time doing management and not enough time focusing on the strategic things that you should be focusing on. Plus, usually you reach a point where you cannot actually do good management when you're above that threshold of 5-6 people managing. So we basically build the entire organization following this rule. The good side is that it actually works properly. The pods are, everything is efficient. There is no, actually we didn't have any hiccups, or not much, not many hiccups from going from 30 to 130. Obviously, there is always casting errors that you do along the way, but you actually realize that pretty soon in the process, so that's fine. But for the rest, it was really good. I think we had a lot of good feedback from managers and people being managed. So I think that's pretty cool. I think the main downside is that it forces you to create layers really fast in your organization. You have like middle management, head off, then you have to create really fast those intermediate levels. But I think it's working out for us so far. We are in capacity of scaling a sales team now up to 100, same thing for the support with the same type of organization. So I think we have some good days still ahead of us in terms of organization. So we'll see how that goes.
So do you just keep growing staff? Like, is this the way that you grow, or do you get to a point where you don't need to keep on laying on staff and the infrastructure will support itself and you don't need to keep on laying on additional people to handle it?
No, that's a good question. The goal was to reach 150, 170 by the end of this year. And I think once we pass that, I think it's important for everyone not to be in a state of a rocket ship all the time when you actually come to the office door and you see like 10 new people. I think at some point you need to let the dust settle. You need like people to get to know each other, to actually put the right processes in place to be more productive without having to do X many onboardings or whatnot. That's the important part. So I would say that past certain numbers, you have to lay things down and then wait for a bit. And then as soon as you make more sense, then you can start accelerating again. But you have to do this kind of sinusoidal
it's like a stock market in small business anyway. It's not
absolutely
like you can't, it's all over the place and you just got to go with the ride sometimes. But so are they all in your office, the majority of the staff, or are they remote working, or how does it work there? Is there a percentage?
No, we actually have we still have our Paris offices. That's around for 30-ish people, and that's pretty much what we have in Paris, around 30 to 40 people. And if you count the Paris suburbs, so outside of Paris. And but for the rest, they're pretty much everywhere in Europe. We have a good team in the US or North America that is actually growing pretty fast. And for the most foreign places, we have people in Mauritius, people in Benin and Ethiopia. Yeah. So it's things as I think, and we actually onboarded our first person in Australia. So James is based in Australia and taking care of that region for us. So this is pretty much going.
So the reasoning behind putting people in those locations, is that for more of a corporate local market to go after? Or is it to provide local support to that market?
So I think the only time we actually thought about it this way was for Australia. Not because we had that many customers in that region. We had some, obviously, but it was also more to have some kind of continuity for the European and North American market in terms of support, and have someone that could actually
time zones and stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, yes, obviously for North America, that makes sense to have people there on the ground selling, because remote selling from Europe to the US is a bit hard. On the self-service basis, it works. This is what we've been doing for historically, but actual selling actual finding new customers and, reaching out by phone or by email is actually much better when it's done on the ground.
Yeah, and in the local time zone too, and obviously with people.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's no substitute for that, I don't think, at the end of the day. Like, I think
for sure.
You can't pretend to be somewhere that you're not. Like, I know people do try, but I've had a few along the way that try to pretend they're not, they're somewhere else. But yeah, it's like eventually you're going to figure them out when you ask them a tricky question. So along the way, like, did you have a lot of scenarios where your time management and your lifestyle, like, you're pretty young, so I guess you don't really have a lot of commitments, so it's pretty easy for you to do this. Did you?
Well,
it was just too engaging in terms of the end of the day. You end up being all these friends, or what happened?
Well, I think my girlfriend will disagree with you. It is time consuming. It is really time consuming. I mean, it's a really, obviously it's an egoistic journey, right? Because you put things first. So I always have to keep somewhere in the back of my head that I have to make sure to be there for that meeting. I have that call coming up. I have that board meeting in the middle of in between vacations or whenever we want to work remote. Actually, one thing that we've started doing this year is start working remotely from different locations to kind of travel. But every time we do that, we have to focus on making sure we have enough bandwidth for calls and whatnot. And that's, it's a constraint. Obviously, it's a constraint. It has a lot of advantages because obviously it's from a career perspective, it is interesting. But it must be hell, working, living with someone that has a company. And even at my level, I mean, there are like tons of bigger size company, faster growth even, and I cannot even imagine how that's for them.
Yeah.
Because
it is a trade-off. I mean, at the end of the day, like, the thing is, though, if you're not, it becomes not like work at the end of the day. So it's almost like it can be 24/7 and it doesn't have to be. You're like 5 o'clock, you just put down tools. An employee might say, okay, I'm going home now, that's it. But for you, your brain just takes home with you, right?
Absolutely. Plus, it doesn't leave your head, and I think that's the worst, making sure you have, not making sure, try enough or try harder to create those mental barriers, when you come home, you try not to think too much about it or go on your phone too much or that kind of thing. And sometimes, sometimes it's also the opposite. Perhaps you want the person you live with to, share what is happening during the day. But, for you, sometimes you just don't want to do that.
You don't talk about it anymore by the time you get home, right?
Yeah, it was like a shitty day, I don't know, shitty investor meeting or something bad happened. And even the tiny things, they tend to really amplify, like 10x. When you're in this, like, as a founder. So I remember that Sunday I had like a really shitty day because for some reason, that person didn't want to, we sent a proposal for hiring and they didn't accept it. And, if you look at it from an external perspective, you're like, yeah, that happens every day, man. No, fuck it. That's life. And I'm like, no, but this is super bad. And it's as if, the company was going to go down because of that, and so everything amplifies 10x, and I think you have to live with that, not show it too much. And sometimes it's just normal not wanting to talk about it. And so, yeah, it's, it comes with a price, definitely.
So tell me, what was the best piece of advice you ever gave yourself?
I think, it's kind of related to the discussion we just had. I think the best piece of advice is, is just, I don't know how to put it in English, but basically I would say, it's going to be okay, essentially. I think, if you take some step back and look at it the right way and really try to lay down the table all different options of the things that can happen in the next few months, next few years, I think there is a stronger probability that things go well than probability that things go really bad.
And I think the thing is too, I always reckon, what will matter in 10 years' time? Will it matter in 10 years' time? And very little does.
Absolutely, and this is exactly the same thing that I apply, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I think you don't have to care about it so much. So that's probably the best advice.
Right, and I think it's what you don't think about is what gets you, not what you think about. Right, so it's stuff that gets you on from left field you never thought was coming at you. Is the stuff that gets you, not the stuff you thought about normally.
Absolutely, and it's I think doing things like we did, and just like taking like a month after month, a day after day, without putting too much pressure on how these things were going to become. If I knew that this was going to become what it is today, starting back in college, I would probably get more afraid of that. And taking day by day, week by week, trying to get the product a little better, get some of the process a little better every day. That's probably the solution for keep things down and keep things
don't get too far
down to earth. Absolutely down to earth. I mean, it doesn't mean that you should not have a vision or whatever, or a dream of the things you want to build, but I think 90% of the time you should be down to earth and thinking about the next day or next week instead of
Makes sense. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I mean, it's an interesting journey, and it's good to see that a company can kind of start up and still disrupt a market that obviously people would think would overcrowded, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I think there's opportunities and there's growth there as well. So I really appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate your time.
So your software is livestorm.co. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's here, livestorm.co. Absolutely. Livestorm.com works now. We have the .com domain, and yeah.
Okay, cool. So I suggest you check it out because I'm quite impressed with it, and I think it shows a lot of maturity for a company that's only been around like 5 years or so. It certainly shows great maturity, and I think it really.
Thank you so much.
It's a fantastic job. That's a wrap on another awesome episode for the Startup Secret Show for entrepreneurs. Just before you go, if you like this episode, we'd be very grateful for a 5-star review. Please also consider recommending the show to a friend or two. Make sure you subscribe for future episodes at startupsecrets.show right now. Until next time, if you're an entrepreneur, make a start on your next great business idea today.